About a month ago, I made a video called Baby, From Sadistic to Sexy about Baby's progressive change from villain to lackey, specifically focusing on the personality shift in between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator, and the bizarre way she was treated in the books. However, there were a few issues with the video. While I still stand behind it, I didn't give a full history of Baby or a clear picture of everything that happened, and instead mostly focused on that one plotline and didn't even go into the actual issues beyond the more superficial ones. Plus, I was still using the AI voice, which was fine, but it didn't allow for quick additions to the script once recorded. Today we will be taking a look at an overview of Circus Baby, who she is, what she did, and what happened in the end. Even with her introduction being halfway through the series, Baby's not only an important character to FNaF, but a frequently used character. Let's look at her humble beginnings, her drastic change, and what may be left of her now. Baby's first reveal was at a secret hidden at the end of FNaF World's Halloween update, during which a man at a desk, who seems to be Scott, reveals that he has created something horrible, named Baby. The room goes dark and a pair of eyes appear, during which we hear a voice saying for everyone to remain in their seats and that the show will begin momentarily. The light comes back on to reveal Deskman has been murdered. What's interesting to note here is that Baby's voice sounds different even though it's the same voice actress, so likely this was just the early stages of working out what the character would sound like. It wasn't too long later when we got our first trailer for Sister Location. In contrast to the softer looking animatronics that might be more familiar to a Showbiz Pizza or a Chuck E. Cheese, Sister Location introduced us to a band of chrome-plated robots, whose more futuristic appearance was a stark cry from the ones we had been previously introduced to, a jarring change to the formula. And that wasn't to be the only one. Now, I'm sure you know the whole rigmarole about how Sister Location was initially introduced as being in the same universe as FNaF, but being its own separate thing and a new start to the series. Kind of like Security Breach. And like Security Breach, that's not exactly what happened. Instead, Sister Location sort of jump-started a major shift in FNAF's storyline by focusing on building up the character and backstory of William Afton, adding in characters such as Michael Afton and Elizabeth, and aiming in a more sci-fi direction compared to the haunted horror of the original games. But that's not all it did. Sister Location was the first game to give animatronics voices, full sentience, and concrete personalities. And our first fully complete FNaF character with an identity, backstory, personality, the works, was Circus Baby. This was a huge jump, especially since up until that point, animatronics had mostly been semi-mindless machines trying to get into the office at night. Even Baby's bandmates could fit the bill, but not Baby. She was something different. While we see her pictures on the walls, while we hear her name, we aren't properly introduced to Circus Baby until the second night of the game. And even then, we do not see her in person until much later. While Baby is initially somewhat aloof, she shortly after becomes helpful and friendly with our main character, helping him survive her bandmates' encounters throughout the night. Unlike her bandmates, Baby is soft-spoken, open to, albeit one-sided conversation, and has a sentience higher than any other animatronic seen so far. Though most of that is likely due to the fact that she is the first animatronic in the series to have this much dialogue, let alone talk to the worker. On night 3, Baby opens up about an event in which she accidentally murdered a child at a birthday party. While this is enough to raise some suspicion, Baby talks about the incident with innocence and a seeming lack of understanding for what happened. But a quick look at her band's blueprints give away what actually happened. While Baby's blueprints read as fully innocent, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Foxy's paint a disturbing picture. With programming to distract and mislead children and parents, to mimic parents' voices, to synthesize smells, and storage tanks, it is clear that they are built to kidnap children. It is confirmed by this story that Baby too has these features, as she mentions fixating on the number of children and counting them, watching the little girl approach alone, and then being unable to control herself as she grabbed and trapped the child inside of her until she died shortly after. Though as we find out later, this might not actually be the case. Now, the child Baby inadvertently killed was one of the utmost importance. Elizabeth Afton, the daughter of William Afton himself, who got too close to Baby while alone and swiftly had her life ended. Through voice lines of Elizabeth's at the end of the nights and the Baby minigame, along with Baby's story, we get a clear picture of the event. Afton told Lizzie not to go near Baby, but then one day at a party, Lizzie approached Baby while nobody else was around. Or while children were around, but then the children left. And Baby baited her with ice cream, grabbed her with a hidden claw, and dragged her into her stomach hatch, where she died. A true tragedy indeed. Baby does, at least from this interaction, sound remorseful. And we go on with the night as planned until an unexpected jump scare ends it prematurely. On night 4, we meet Baby for the first time. The real Baby. Trapped inside of a suit, Baby begins to speak again, but this time she's not nearly as friendly. Her voice is sinister, revealing that she kidnapped us and that we're in a dangerous suit that could go off at any moment. She's bitter at times, snide, and mocking towards Ballora as she's scooped in front of our eyes, showing an amount of disdain or a lack of care for her bandmates. Though one of the most important things we learn about Baby is that she has learned how to pretend to get what she wants. And this is important because, yeah, Baby's been pretending the entire time. Spoiler alert here, but Baby's not being friendly just because she's lonely, and that innocent, "I don't know what happened" explanation from the night before was just an act, as we see in night 5, in which Baby almost immediately goes back to her soft and needy charade. She goes to play her into parts and service, where she asks them to do a few menial tasks and send her to be scooped, because she's broken and she can't be fixed. She needs your help to do it. This is the first time seeing Baby in person. She's big, and I mean huge. Her blueprints say that she stands a massive 7.2 feet tall. And she's the only one that's stylized like she should be Balloon Boy sized. Though we see her slouched over and unmoving, so it's not too creepy of an introduction. She warns us that Ballora is running around and promises to protect us. At one point, she even pacifies Ballora with a soft plea, assuring her that he will help them and that it will be okay. Interesting that Baby's behavior towards Ballora has done a full 180 since last night, isn't it? What is actually going on here, if you're not aware, is that Baby is playing the long con and playing us for the fool. As revealed a few minutes later, her and her band have whipped themselves into an amalgam and are planning on using the new technician as a bodysuit to escape Afton Robotics and live free amongst the human population. In fact, the whole fake Ballora thing is just her using a semi-veiled threat or a good cop, bad cop routine to spook you in the right direction into the scooping room. Canonically, she succeeds. Only to dump the body once it rots and then get dumped by her band once they decide that disdain between bandmates is mutual. In an alternate ending, the player runs to a private room where they must keep out Innard, an amalgam of Baby and her band. All the while, Baby feigns innocence and desperately tries to convince him to give himself up, even though now her manipulative tactics are on full display. Believing that the player is William Afton, Baby begins to coax him into giving himself up, promising him to see her again, and even feigning her voice. Now here's something worth noting. While Baby is assumed to be possessed by Elizabeth, saying she hears her sometimes, she always refers to Elizabeth as a separate person. Didn't you come here for her, to be with her again? The only time Baby or Innard claims to be Elizabeth is when they're faking her voice to bait out the player, who they believe to be William Afton. Alas, it is actually her brother Michael, and it doesn't work. But again, that is the false ending. We know what actually happened. So much of what we heard Baby say and how we saw her act was a carefully crafted act used to dupe her unsuspecting prey right into her trap. It's incredibly disturbing, but it's also very crafty, showing an amount of planning and patience that no other animatronic has been capable of so far. Not even her bandmates, who would so readily kill Michael and ruin their next chance to escape. But here's the kicker. As evil as she is, as sinister and manipulative, Baby is actually a multifaceted character with a surprising amount of complexity. Even though she is a threat and it is hard to sympathize with her, especially when it feels like falling for her baiting, she truly is a tragic character. These elaborate ruses and despicable plans are adaptations that came from living a life of constant pain. This is all but admitted to when Baby reveals that she learned how to pretend to avoid punishments such as the scooper. She didn't learn initially to scheme her way out. She learned to adapt to avoid pain. Something all the more tragic if she really is possessed by Elizabeth. Baby is a product of her environment, fueled by the soul of a child in a traumatic situation, tortured and used by a rental company without any free will of her own. While this doesn't excuse Baby's behavior, it does shed light on how she got to this point. And this is what's so great about Baby, because she's just so terrible in these moments that you can't feel bad for her. But when you take in the grand scheme of everything, you realize that she really is someone worth feeling sympathy for. She's a monster, but she was forced to become this to survive. Now, there's something I should clarify here once more. I know I said this already. Baby thought Michael was William. Michael says so as much as her baiting of Elizabeth does, who she talks about as though she is a third party. Baby is angry. She's been tortured. She wants her freedom and she's willing to use anyone to get it. She doesn't love William. He's just a pawn to escape. Until Pizzeria Simulator, now she loves her daddy and just wants to make him proud. Suddenly, Baby is Afton's daughter, as she identifies him as daddy. Her resentment from before is long gone. Even though she attempted to use and scoop him, now she just wants to do whatever he wants. Yeah, I don't know what happened here. Or, I do. See, Pizzeria Simulator is where the books and the games became one, and to align with the portrayal in the books, Baby had to stop being her own complex character and now be subservient to Afton. All of the personality is erased from Baby. Like, at the end of the game, Baby has this long, validating monologue, but it doesn't feel like her. Remember, Baby was constantly playing a character. Even when in the private room, she would wear that mask as she tried to turn the tables in her favor. And when she wasn't, she was cruel and bitter. Now she's talking like she's part of a cult, about how William has brought them all together, and how William has brought them all such a bounty and will rise them from their mortal coils. I've heard people say that Will brainwashed her. Look at him, the man can barely hold himself up. And Baby's not supposed to be stupid. She was very perceptive in Sister Location. If he's trapped in here with her, she can't actually think he's pulling the strings here. It's just a long-winded villain ramble so that Henry can interject and be like, "Actually, I, Henry, William's former business partner and father of one of the main characters, am about to ruin your whole career." You didn't have to, Henry. This character shift did it enough. Woof. That being said, at least Baby's design is cool. After being thrown out of Innard, who decided to convert to Molten Freddy, Baby rebuilds herself into Scrap Baby. She now wears her claw on her arm, exposing how dangerous she is. She also has a neat pair of roller skates. It's this threatening design that makes me wish they would have just kept her old personality. Baby was scary in a very real way, and now she is quite threatening and sharp to look at. She looks like just touching her would be extremely painful. That works for what you're trying to do. You don't need to downgrade her, because the only reason Baby would be subservient to Afton, after showing that she wasn't, is to make Afton look more like a threat. But he's not. At least not in this game. And you know what? Considering what this game is, or what it was supposed to be, which is a revenge tale against the main villain, I think that was just fine. But I digress. Baby, like the others, burns in the fire. But that is not the end for her, not just in her many cameo editions, but possibly in the main line as well. Baby appears in Ultimate Custom Night in 2 versions, Circus Baby and Scrap Baby. Both have similar voice lines, though they seem a little more tailored towards their personalities and games. They both play differently as well. With Circus Baby, she hangs out in the hallway until you get enough coins to buy her plushie. Then she leaves. This is a mechanic shared with Nightmare Mangle and Nightmare Bonnie. I don't think there's like a connection here. I think there just had to be a few of these to fit all the characters in. In the grand scheme of things, this feels more like a Baby thing than a Nightmare thing anyway. Scrap Baby plays differently. She stays mounted in the office, slumped over, and the second she lifts her head slightly, you have to shock her or she'll immediately jump scare you. You know what? I actually think they should have maybe switched these two. Baby slumped in the office, and if you don't zap her when she sits up, a claw pops out of her and gets you. While Scrap Baby, faster with her skates, waits outside, and if you don't pay her off, she rushes the door. Maybe she can't break through the door, but her slamming into it takes a good chunk of power. Thinking too deeply into this, there's something sad about the idea that you have to buy Baby gifts to appease her. Again, I don't think this wasn't a mechanic strictly to her, I'm just thinking out loud. Children deprived of love may learn to be won over with gifts from their parents to keep them quiet. Parents who cannot give real love and can only buy them off. Anyway, that's just a random thought. Baby's next appearance was in Help Wanted, where she appears in her typical baby form in one of the minigames. The player hides in the closet, trying to balance the possessed toys in it, while Baby walks around outside. You can't have the doors closed constantly, so you have to wait and close them when Baby's looking over to not get caught. It's actually pretty neat, especially since this is the first and only time we see Baby in action. Just the way she, toddles around the room is surprisingly cute for a 7-foot-tall clown. A good showing. Next, Baby was such an important character to FNaF that she was one of the few FNaF characters to be released in FNaF AR on launch, and was shown in the advertising. She sort of plays like a difficult variation of Freddy, harder to handle, but doesn't have any complicated steps. She got 2 skins, which is about the middle ground. She didn't get as many as Springtrap or Bonnie, but she got as many as Freddy, and they're pretty neat. Okay, I have to cover the books before Security Breach, so let's get into it. I won't discuss Eleanor in this video because even though she looks like Baby, she technically isn't. And while Circus Babies appears in Fazbear Frights, Circus Baby herself doesn't feature in any story. So, the 4th closet. Okay, it's time to get into this. And I know what you think I'm going to say. You think I'm going to go off on the whole sexified and submissive baby thing again, since I did it in the Sadistic to Sexy video. Indeed, I think Baby's changed from looking like an animatronic to a voluptuous human, to the point that major moments in the game are reframed with said human body, are a pretty good visual aid in getting across how Baby's importance was shifted from a seemingly innocuous but sinister figure to a piece of eye candy. However, that is not the worst thing about the 4th closet's Baby, and I think I didn't get that across in my last video. See, making this visual change was one of those, wow, that's pretty lame sort of things. But what they actually did to Baby herself is beyond that. Let's start with this. Baby is not Elizabeth Afton. She might be in there, but Baby has had sentience beforehand. And it is downright dumb. Baby is actually the 4th Charlie, who was born evil because Henry was angry when he built her. Like the only reason Charlie is a moody teen, or basically shows any emotion or reflection for her childhood trauma, is because Henry was feeling questionable about what he was doing. Charlie and Baby's feelings don't exist. They are both just stages of Henry's grief, and the story treats them as such. Way to invalidate the feelings of your main characters. Baby is a big exposition dump, with her primary goals basically to be William's arms and to do silly drama stuff like trying to flirt with and kiss Charlie's boyfriend, and having characters gush about how sexy she is, and then spending an egregious amount of time explaining to Charlie about Henry's backstory. She's just as much of a prop as Charlie is. Her backstory is, Lizzie, totally unimportant. It is one of her backstories, but it is the one that could have been easily dropped. Towards the end, they try to go into this deep, oh, it's so tragic, but the story doesn't really do itself any favors in getting this across. Baby is not a character. I mean, she's not. She's quite literally just evil Charlie, who occasionally looks like Baby, so they can link it back to the games. Because other than that coat of paint, she doesn't act like Baby. She doesn't look like Baby. She has several backstories, and only one is slightly like Circus Baby's, except the details are changed. So yeah, being suddenly sexualized is the least of her problems. And I wanted to point this out too. You might think I have a problem with sexy characters. I don't. It's situations like this, or the uncomfortable implications of Vanny, which I have a problem with. Something about women William Afton has direct control over being dolled up in tight clothes and posed in coy little positions feels kind of gross. and not in a Madness Returns way where it was on purpose playing towards the themes. Baby and Vanny are made like this just to ogle at, which is an especially bizarre decision to make with Baby, because other than that extremely gaudy poster, she was entirely in the books until the Fourth Closet graphic novel came out. There's no narrative reason to make her super sexy. Speaking of which, let's talk about Security Breach. Baby appears in 2 cameos with her head on the blob and with the staff bot styled after her. But those aren't important. What is important is Vanessa and Vanny. Now, in my last video, I brushed over this but didn't explain it well enough. But Vanessa and Vanny pretty much replaced Baby's role in the story. I don't think I made it clear last time that what I meant is that as a female lackey who was subservient to William Afton because of their own daddy issues and who supposedly is pretending to be good, though Vanessa doesn't get enough screen time to do that, she has taken on the role. That role was not initially Baby's, but she was pushed into that when it was required. Vanessa and Vanny have a slew of similarities to the later stage Baby. Here they are. The daddy issues. Vanessa has a father named Bill who used her and who she has issues with. We're assuming this is Vanessa's backstory, but it could also just be Afton backstory disguised as her backstory, which would be a shame because then you would basically be sacrificing her story just to talk more about Afton. Bill is short for William. They have assumed similar behaviors, and because of that, Vanessa was supposed to be obedient towards him. Vanessa has Elizabeth's blonde hair. In the games, it's shown to be strawberry blonde, but this was changed to blonde in the books, so it is assumed to be currently blonde. She also has her green eyes. In a cut email, Vanessa was also revealed to have the last name starting with A, which is likely Afton. Like I said earlier, Vanessa is supposed to play the role of the villain pretending to be good, only to suddenly switch into a sinister and malicious form. Vanny has childish tendencies, something Baby also used to show. The skin-tight outfit matches the late-stage Evil Charlie redesign. They're also voiced by the same voice actress, at least Vanessa and Baby are. Now, just one of these might be a coincidence, but all of these... Look, let's be blunt. Vanessa's design is pretty much inspired by the idea of adult Elizabeth Afton. At least it carries a ton of her traits. And the role she fills was the one that they originally tried to put Baby into without great success. Now, I'm not saying they're the same person. I think they are conceptually very similar people. When I say replacement, I mean it in a role sort of way, not in a literal, this is the new variation of Baby. I think that Vanessa and Vanny's creation was made to capitalize on the ideas that they tried to follow through on with Baby. Sort of like how Eleanor has Innard's gimmicks, but none of his charm. That isn't to say Vanessa and Vanny are bad, no. But you can see that replacement factor. And it's a shame because something important got lost in the process. I don't think FNaF knows exactly what to do with Baby. I know that's kind of a bold claim to make, but this confusing amount of disconnect shows it. In cameos or compilations, Baby is her old and original self. When it applies to a greater story, Baby is subservient, before she was replaced with someone who fills the exact role they changed Baby to fill. I know Vanny didn't exist yet, but they should have just made Will a henchwoman separate of Baby if they really wanted to go with that idea so much, because Baby deserved better. She was an excellent villain, dare I say, far better than what William turned into. And a series with this many characters and this many location really needs more than one villain. That's why the storyline is so messy, because it keeps trying to make Afton the cause of and source of everything, and he just can't do that. And there was a chance to make a second villain with just as much manipulation potential as William, someone bitter and resentful, led by anger and a need to survive. But that wasn't what they wanted at the time. So they got rid of what they had and turned her into what they wanted, and when she no longer had use, they replaced her. So that's the story of Baby, a tale as old as time, a character billed as the next big step who lost her way. Unlike the puppet, and Innard, and Funtime Freddy, I can't entirely say that I don't expect Circus Baby to make more appearances in the future. In fact, Circus Baby has been such a prolific and popular character that I wouldn't be surprised if she had a new model introduced in the future. That doesn't mean that it'll be the same character. I would actually be legitimately shocked if Baby didn't have any more big roles after this part, or at least side roles as a bandmate. especially with the possible upcoming clown merch, which might have actually been more connected to the canceled FNaF AR than to Ruin, but we'll see. Alas, I don't think that the baby we're going to get is ever going to have the same pull or the same story impact as Circus Baby did from Sister Location. And that's a shame, because I think they had the potential to do something really neat past that point, and it just got lost in the process. Though, for what it's worth, we did, at least for one game, have a really cool villain. Thanks for watching.